Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Looking for ways to keep the kids entertained while traveling? Netflix Games lets them jump into fun, creative adventures at no extra cost. Everything's unlocked with your Netflix membership. From Paw Patrol Academy and Lego Duplo World to Barbie color creations and World of Peppa Pig, there's something for every little explorer. And you don't need Wi-Fi. Kids can play anytime, anywhere. Visit netflixfamily.com/travel tips for all your kids' holiday entertainment.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia,
and essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is a vice chair of the New York State Republican Party, as well as being the county chair in Suffolk County. With noted commentator turned essayist Eric Levine, I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse is away celebrating the Christmas holidays abroad with his family. We have on good information that he's in Italy. We wish him well, and we hope he enjoys his holiday with his family. Today, Eric and I are delighted to have a good friend of ours, Michael Whatley. Chairman Whatley was chairman of the Republican National Committee. Previously had served as chair of the Republican Party of North Carolina. As my wife would say, what do you need 4 degrees for? I have 4 degrees. And Mike has 4 degrees. University of North Carolina, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, 2 degrees, including a law degree. So Mike is a successful businessman. Mike is a successful attorney, a great political strategist, a great public policy thinker. And Chairman Whatley, we're delighted to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it is great to be on with you guys. Really appreciate a chance to catch up with you.
Well, Mike, it's Eric Levine. Thank you for joining us. 4 degrees. I mean, I hope you didn't take out too many student loans for that.
It took a bit, but we paid them all back, and has definitely been very worthwhile. I think that what I wanted to do is just make sure that we were going to be in a great position to really truly do some good as I came out and was able to hit the ground running.
See, I don't understand why you paid back the student loans. Just wait for the next administration, and they'll be free.
No, free for everybody except for people who work hard.
So who's the fool here? But anyway, we'll kind of skip over that one. So I think we could all agree that people's perceptions depends on where they're sitting. So at one point in time, as Richard pointed out, you were the head of the RNC, the Republican National Committee. You've led campaigns, and now you're running a campaign. Now you're running for Senate. So how has that changed your perception on how campaigns should be run, and which is more fun?
Well, I think being a candidate is absolutely fantastic, and I'm very, very excited about it. I had, an opportunity in the last cycle to really help run President Trump's campaign. Move around the country with him and with Vice President Vance, and really see, what a national campaign is all about. And truly, we're now living the results of that campaign with the most, I think, transformational term in our lifetimes of any president in terms of, how bad things were under Joe Biden with inflation, going through the roof, and grocery prices and gasoline prices and housing prices, going through the roof, and the world being a far more dangerous place because America was so weak. And now, all of a sudden, we're seeing jobs are being created. 700,000 new jobs have been brought online since President Trump took over. Inflation is way down, from 9% to 2.7% announced today. And America's respected again around the world. This is the real impact of an election, right? And elections really do have impacts. And so for me now to be a candidate is really amazing opportunity to represent the great state of North Carolina in the Senate and make sure that this state has a conservative voice and that President Trump has an ally in the Senate.
Yeah, I don't think people fully appreciate. People know that campaigns are expensive, but I don't think people fully understand how expensive. Just give our listeners a sense of how much the North Carolina Senate race is going to cost.
Well, we're hearing our projections. It's going to cost somewhere from $600 to $800 million here in North Carolina, which would make it the most expensive Senate race in the history of the country. We've had some very expensive races in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Georgia over the last several years. But when you talk about North Carolina, we're a true purple state. We're 30% Republican, 30% Democrat, 40% unaffiliated, which is our version of the independents. And, you've got 8 different media markets, and you're just going to have a lot of interest because if North Carolina flips Democrat, it is very hard for the Republicans to hold the Senate. And if Republicans hold the Senate, if I hold this seat, then it's very hard for the Democrats to get control of the Senate. So all eyes are going to be on North Carolina.
So just focusing on a couple of issues. I know one of the big issues you've been making down in North Carolina is the issue of crime. You've been quite outspoken about crime and the failure of your opponent, Governor Cooper, when he was in charge to deal with the issue. What's the difference in your two approaches to the issue of crime?
Well, I believe that the highest, most important function of any government, whether it's a state government, a local government, or the federal government, is protecting its citizens. And Roy Cooper, when he was the governor, fought harder for illegal aliens and criminals than he did his own constituents. We go back to 2020 when Antifa and BLM were rioting and burning down cities all across the country. My opponent was out there marching with them. And he signed an executive order saying he wanted to reimagine law enforcement in North Carolina. He created cashless bail and pretrial release. He created a revolving door that put criminals right back out on the street after they'd been arrested. We're running a digital campaign right now. We call it Mugshot Mondays, where we are highlighting criminals who've been arrested and released more than 50 times under Roy Cooper's soft on crime policies. What I want to do is keep our kids and our communities safe. I want to make sure that our law enforcement has the tools that they need and that when criminals are repeat criminals, they're going to be treated accordingly.
Yeah, we have a mayor-elect who is reimagining crime. He's for it. It's big
joke. Big joke. The joke is on the people of New York City.
Exactly right. So I'm glad to hear that somebody is going to be in a position of power that is opposed to crime. That's refreshing. So the big issue in 2025, at the end of 2025, in the elections here was the issue of affordability. Today, if you listen to affordability and how it's defined by the Democratic Socialists of America, who really now inhabit the Democratic Party, it's all about free stuff, socialism. When you hear the term affordability, what do you hear and how do you deal with it?
Well, look, what I would say is President Trump ran a campaign in 2024 based on affordability. We talked about grocery prices and gasoline prices and housing prices. We talked about inflation that was absolutely sky high, interest rates that were sky high, like all of the issue sets that the president talked about last cycle, you could sum up as affordability. It's not this new concept that the Democrats just came up with, right? I mean, the fact is we need to get interest rates down. Well, Jerome Powell at the Fed refuses to lower those interest rates. President Trump has called him out on that. And we need a new chairman at the Fed who's going to be able to reduce rates. Inflation has come down from 9%. We saw 34% increased inflation over the course of President Biden's term. Today, they announced 2.7, where we beat expectations again, and the market, takes off because of that, right? But, we need grocery prices to go down. We need gasoline prices to come down. Thank God President Trump has unleashed American energy, and we're now seeing gasoline. I paid $2.49 a gallon in North Carolina just last night. That is dramatically better in terms of energy prices that have come down on his watch. So, we're not going to cede an inch as Republicans on the issue of affordability. My opponent, Roy Cooper, wants to talk a lot about health care costs. Well, you know what? They went up 57% on his watch as the governor. They went up dramatically between the first time he ran in 2016 and, later in 2024 when he stepped out. North Carolina has the highest health care costs of any state in the country because of his failed policies. So what we need to do is make sure that we're having the conversation on affordability, but we're not going to accept the premise from the Democrats that the affordability issue started on January 20th of 2025. What happened is all of those costs exploded when Joe Biden and Roy Cooper were in office.
So one of the issues, though, that people, the Republicans, Speaker Mike Johnson in particular, has tried to focus people's attention on is wait till the big, beautiful bill kicks in on January 1 and the benefits that people across the country will reap. Is there something part of that bill in particular that the citizens of North Carolina will be able to benefit from?
Well, look, I think you go back to what are the individual provisions in that bill that are so tremendously important. Extending the Trump tax cuts avoided the largest tax hike in the history of this country. And so every North Carolina family that's filing taxes is going to have a benefit. But then we also created no tax on tip, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. These are provisions for working class Americans, working class North Carolinians. My opponent, Roy Cooper, said he would have voted against this bill. Of course he would have. This is a guy who vetoed 6 different tax cuts as the governor of North Carolina. This is a guy who voted for multiple tax cuts as a state legislator in North Carolina. This guy has never seen a dollar he didn't want to tax or spend. I've never seen a tax I didn't want to cut.
Well, Mike, let me tell you some of my thoughts, and Eric will deny it, but I am the House Democrat.
Nobody believes it, not even his wife.
But the point is, people say to me, you call yourself a Democrat. And I often say, I call myself a Democrat because I was a Reagan Democrat, a common sense Democrat. My party has left me. I didn't leave my party. I'm still hopeful, properly, naively hopeful, that they'll come back to the center and have common sense. But I'm looking at the Democratic Party today. It has a big isolationist fringe. They don't understand the responsibilities of the United States to lead the coalition to protect Western civilization. They're statist in the sense they want government to take over large sectors of the economy. They give away free stuff and they cause the inflation. The budget deficits are in large measure Democratic deficits, and as is the big trillions and trillions of dollars of debt that we owe. And to me, the salient moment to me that I realized we were in trouble, and I want to get your thoughts about this, is Obamacare. And I remember that scene at the White House where Biden, then the vice president, leans over to Obama, then the president. He said, this is a big blank deal. And they said, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're going to be able to keep your doctor, your insurance plan. It's going to reduce costs. There'll be plenty of doctors to service you and hospitals to service you. It turned out that every one of those matters was a lie. It was a fabrication. They promised everything. They gave back nothing. And having given back nothing, they inflated the costs of everything because one of the big factors in our economy is healthcare. I'd like to get your view on this.
Well, look, you're absolutely right that when the Democrats passed Obamacare, they did not have a single Republican vote, and they promised it was going to lower health care costs. They lied. They promised you could keep your doctor. They lied, right? And so Obamacare has absolutely driven prices up dramatically over the course of its tenure. The subsidies that the federal government has thrown at this have been targeted towards the insurance companies, which have only padded the insurance company bottom lines. You look at the stock value, portfolio value of the healthcare companies over the course of the tenure of Obamacare. They've gone up with the subsidies. That has not resulted in lower healthcare costs or premiums for anybody else. So, we need to have a real conversation on that. I think one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is President Trump has negotiated directly with the drug companies to bring down the prices, right? Maybe we should look at legislation that would actually enact those price cuts, right, so that Americans are not paying more for drugs than all the rest of the countries around the world.
Well, I think that's very, very important because if you can stem the inflationary costs of health care, you're doing a lot for the economy. Presidents and governors and mayors get blamed a lot for the economic decisions in the current state of the economy. But they're practical things they can do. And what they can do is have common sense approaches that you, Mr. Chairman, have been articulating. The free market works best, and you cannot have situations where government comes in with their state industrial policy and dictate down, tell everybody how everything's supposed to work. They did that with health care. They've tried to do that with energy, particularly foisting electronic vehicles on people who don't want electronic vehicles, not understanding that you have to have a uniform policy of diverse energy sources, not just relying on wind and solar and abolishing fossil fuels or natural gases. And so it's very, very important that you have to have common sense solutions. How do you deal about that?
Well, look, we need to have common sense solutions, like you said. We also need to have private sector solutions. What we don't need is command and control from the federal government, who are trying to take over every company, who are trying to take over every industry. One of the things that was most remarkable about President Biden's tenure is you can't point to a single sector of the economy where he made it better. He went after the tech guys. He went after healthcare guys. He went after automotive and manufacturers. He went after energy producers. I mean, literally every single aspect of our economy, President Biden and his administration, the Democrats that were in control, went after him every single day. That is absolutely not how you're going to grow the economy. I think we need to have tax policies, trade policies, and regulatory policies that are going to allow our manufacturers, our small businesses, and our farmers to succeed and to thrive and to create new jobs here, right? We need to move our supply lines, here in America. We need to reshore our manufacturing, and we're not going to do that with a command and control government, right? Like my opponent, Roy Cooper, strongly supports the approach that Joe Biden took. He tried to put the Green New Deal provisions in play here in North Carolina and help drive North Carolina electricity prices through the roof, right? Thank God President Trump is unleashing American energy, and we're bringing those prices down.
Well, Chairman Michael Whatley, candidate for the United States Senate, the Republican candidate in North Carolina, it's very important that people understand that we can only get progress if you have an agenda that makes sense. Wishful thinking and idle promises that are unfulfilled and cause damage are not the answer. And the way to win that is to ensure, and this is coming from the House Democrat, notwithstanding Eric's criticism of my comment that I'm a House Democrat, the only way to do that...
I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying it's not true.
No, you're criticizing my characterization. So I say, very simply, it's important to have people like Mike Whatley in the United States Senate. It's very important that the Republican Party hold on to the leadership and the control of the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives, because otherwise they'll impede the ability for President Trump to protect our borders, to make us energy independent, to give real productivity to our economy and affordability to Americans.
And I would add two words, Chuck Schumer. There could be no worse human being on the planet to lead the single most important legislative body in the world than Chuck Schumer.
And that's why it's important to have Mike Whatley elected as the next senator from...
so that John Thune can keep the job.
Because John Thune is the best. He's a good friend of all of ours and a wonderful man. So, Chairman Whatley, if somebody wanted to make a contribution to your campaign, how would they do that?
They can go to WhatleyForSenate.com. WhatleyForSenate.com. And we've got the links, we've got the forums, and we definitely need people to support us. We're going to have the most expensive Senate race in the history of the country, and it is absolutely the linchpin for the Republicans to keep control, as you guys just laid out.
Chairman Whatley, on behalf of Eric, myself, and our colleague, Chairman Garcia, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a healthy and happy New Year, great success in the new year. God bless you. God bless our country. God bless the people of North Carolina. And I pray that they do the right thing by electing you to the United States Senate. Thank you for joining us today.
Mike, thanks for coming on.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a happy Hanukkah and a great new year. And for all your listeners, we do hope everybody has a happy Hanukkah and a Merry Christmas and a great new year. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and
essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party is off in Europe vacationing for the Christmas season, and with his family, we wish Jesse well. With me is my good friend and other co-host, noted commentator, attorney, essayist, Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Well, we're just fortunate enough to have Mike Whatley, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, chairman of the Republican Party in North Carolina, candidate for the United States Senate, joining us for a very interesting conversation. I want to switch gears, Eric, and I want to talk about something I find deeply troubling, horrifying, and unfortunately, I'm pessimistic that we're looking at the beginning and not the end of this crisis, this ugliness. And I'm talking about the Intifada going global. You see episodes across Europe, various European cities, whether it's violent attacks against Jews, whether it's demonstrations that block entrances and exits to public accommodations and places of worship, where there's signs talking for violence against Jews. Intifada is nothing but a bloodthirsty cry for the death and the attack of Jews. It's happened in America, a number of instances across America in recent days and in the last year. Australia, savage attack by a father and son inspired by ISIS. A question came up last night in Katz and Cosby about, which sect of the Muslim religion, Islam, is responsible for this. And the guest correctly pointed out that it's not about a sect. It's not the Shia as opposed to the Sunnis, because you have Islamists in each of those two sects. The danger is there's a worldview of hegemony, domination, control, the extermination of anybody who stands in their way to impose their religious, ideological, political views on everyone else. And so first it'll be the Jews. They showed you what happens in Africa and in the Middle East, also in Europe. There are attacks against Christians as well as and Buddhists and other religions that are not adherent to this extreme radical vision of Islam. This is not a religion sect. This is a group of people using some tracts from the religion and the political tracts to declare war on the rest of the world in the name of Islamist hegemony. We're not talking about Muslims per se. We're talking about a group, both Sunni and Shia, who do this. And I'm very concerned about this Intifada going global, and I don't see it calming down. I don't see any kind of meaningful leadership on the part of governmental and political leaders. I say to you, Eric, the silence is deafening. Where is the outrage? Where is the disgust? Where is the condemnation? What is going on in this world and what's going on in our country?
I wish there was silence. The problem is what's being said. Look, it is open season on the Jews around the globe. Let's be honest. Manchester and Australia, Bondi Beach, are not isolated instances. They are connected, not by the same people, but by the same concept. Globalize, the Intifada are very powerful words. And they don't mean different things to different people. It means, as you pointed out, kill Jews. Now, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of England and the UK, he doesn't want to kill Jews. And Prime Minister Albanese, he doesn't want to kill Jews. But both of them have created an atmosphere in which Jew hatred would explode. This notion that they would recognize a Palestinian state without any compromise or concessions by the Palestinian people, the implication or the express statement that Israel is an oppressor state, they give life to the blood libel that Israel is committing a genocide, the lie that Israel's an occupying power. Israel's fighting
apartheid too. They say
apartheid. Yeah. Oh, these are all lies. These are all lies, and they know they're lies. But they not to the extent that they don't refute them. To the extent that they don't say them, they don't refute them, and they allow it to fester and grow. And I mean, let's just take a step back for a moment. Look what happened at Bondi Beach, and I'd be remiss if we didn't point out there were heroes here, and I'll point to four of them. The first was a Detective Cesar Barraza. He is the first Australian officer who got there. Took them about 10 minutes, but they finally got there, and through a remarkable act of sniping, was able to take out one of the murderers. And so kudos to him. 69-year-old Boris Gutman and 61 Sophia Gutman, husband and wife, tried to wrestle one of the terrorists to the ground. They were unsuccessful, and they were both murdered. There's a moving, beautiful picture of the two of them embraced, lying on the ground, dead. And then perhaps the greatest hero of them all was Ahmed al-Ahmad, a Muslim, an Australian Muslim citizen who attacked one of the gunmen and was successful in wresting the gun away from him and stopping additional killing. If Mr. Ahmed al-Ahmad had not been successful, who knows how many other people would have died. So God bless him. But there are people who deserve a great deal of blame. And one of them is Prime Minister Albanese, who has been a particular critic of Israel and who has been particularly tone deaf to the pleas of the Jewish community in Australia, dismissing their concerns about the rise of anti-Semitism. And then his initial statement after the murder didn't even include the word Jews or Hanukkah in his statement. Somebody pointed out the quote-unquote oversight after his initial statement. He came back and, they killed Jews and it was on Hanukkah. It's terrible. But it really comes back to a point that I've made before.
Was that ignorance or intentional?
It's hard to know. I can't read the minds of other people, but it's hard to know. But given Albanese's downplaying of the anti-Semitism, it could very well have been intentional because the Muslim population in Australia is growing and the Jewish population in Australia is decreasing. But it comes back to, of course, everybody's upset and beside themselves. Starmer gave a very moving statement after the Manchester shootings on Yom Kippur. Albanese eventually got around to saying something meaningful about the murders on Bondi Beach on Hanukkah. But it was pity for dead Jews. Everybody can pity dead Jews. What motivates this stuff and what creates this atmosphere of hate and bloodlust against the Jews is this notion that Jews can't fight back. This notion that if a Jew fights back, that's a crime, that's a bridge too far, we can't support that. And Israel is the embodiment of a strong Jew. And that's why they hate Israel, because they can't stand that a Jew is fighting back. And this hatred, I'm sorry to say, is coming to the United States, if it's not already here. And it's coming to New York. We have a mayor who, again, issued some statement about how...
A mayor-elect.
A mayor-elect who's... I mean,
we have a good mayor.
We have a good mayor.
We have a good mayor.
Right. Mayor Adams, kudos to him, gave a very strong condemnation in no uncertain terms how disgusting this was, and that the term globalized intifada had a large part in bringing this hatred to Australia and to Manchester. God bless Eric Adams. Zoran Mamdani, in contrast, again, oh, dead Jews, it's terrible, the Jewish community will protect them. Garbage. When he's repeatedly asked again and again after Bondi Beach whether or not he would renounce and condemn the expression of globalize the intifada, he still gives us the crap of, I encourage people not to use that term.
Use the term?
What the hell? What the hell does that mean? It's okay to go kill people. It's okay to kill Jews.
Don't use the term.
I won't. Don't ask me to kill Jews, but just don't use the term. Just be silent about what you want to do. Now, also, so for Mamdani, this is actually a pretty clever political ploy, because he can say, I hate anti-Semitism, but globalize the intifada in his mind is kill Zionists. He draws a distinction in his mind between Zionists and Jews. And if you're a Jew and you're willing to give up your support of Israel, if you're willing to say that the Jewish state of Israel has no right to exist, or that it should be destroyed, then you have a place in Mamdani world. But if you're
does that mean somebody in a different country country, whether it's Australia or England or in Europe or the United States, who's Jewish and who's a Zionist, does that make them fair game
Yes.
in this globalized intifada nonsense?
Absolutely. So to one audience, the American audience, the rational Western audience, when he condemns anti-Semitism, they're hearing, oh, he doesn't want people to kill Jews even if they support Israel. But to the people he's truly talking to, the anti-Zionists, the real anti-Semites, the people that want to destroy the state of Israel, his failure to condemn the statement of globalize the intifada and what it means. He also has given this measly mouth, I just think it means, freedom for the Palestinians. He's the only person on the planet who believes that. No one else interprets it that way. Everybody understands that globalize the intifada means kill Jews everywhere. But he wants to draw this false distinction between being Jewish and the crime of being a Zionist. Remember, at the Park East Synagogue, he accused the people in the synagogue who were exercising the First Amendment right of freedom of religion, freedom of association, and freedom of speech of violating international law because they were holding a forum on how to make aliyah, how to migrate to Israel. That made them Zionists. That made them their mere existence was a violation of international law. And let's look to who he's bringing into his government. Now, we've spoken before about a whole host of people, but his most recent appointment, Ramzi Qasim, to head the Office of Chief Counsel, the Corporation Counsel, one of the single most important people in
Is it the Corporation Counsel or is it Chief Counsel of the Mayor?
I think it's Chief Counsel of the Mayor.
Okay.
Still,
because I'll tell you why it's important. I raise the issue. The position of Chief Counsel of the Mayor, you're within the City Hall apparatus, and you serve at the pleasure of the mayor. You're appointed by the mayor. There's no advice and consent. Whereas the Corporation Counsel of the City of New York, who's the head of the law department of the City of New York, is subject to advice and consent.
Okay, so it's
That's important.
It's the Office of Chief Counsel, Ramzi Qasim. Who of some of his clients? Who are some of the people he defended? He's defended Mahmoud Khalil. He's the Garcia Nazi that led the protests at Columbia University. Ahmed al-Darbi, an al-Qaeda member. There are people who participated in anti-Israel protests while students at the law school. He himself, Qasim, has accused Israel of ethnic cleansing decades before October 7th. So he has represented terrorists. He has used the terms of terrorism. And this is who's going to be the single most important legal advisor to the mayor.
Let me give you another one. And I don't know this gentleman's religion, and I use the term gentleman very loosely. His name is Jack Gross. And Jack Gross is an anti-American, if there ever was one. He says America is evil, and America needs to be punished. And that's the kind of mind and ideological dementia of people who are advisors and consultants to him. It's the people who reinforce the bias that he was brought up with, the hatred he was brought up by his parents, particularly his father, the professor at Columbia, who is nothing but an anti-Semite, nothing but an Islamist sympathizer. So from the earliest days of his life, this kid, Mandami, he's going to be our mayor, was indoctrinated by his father.
He's also appointed Tamika Mallory into his administration. Who's Tamika Mallory? She's one of the originators of the Women's March, who eventually was forced to resign because she wouldn't allow Jewish women to march. She is an acolyte of Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan. These are the people who are going to be in his administration. He cannot say he is not an anti-Semite, but he draws this false distinction between Jews and Zionists. And it comes back to this concept of the dhimmi. We've talked about that before. Jews will be protected under Islam in the Quran, provided they give up certain rights and recognize that
when they slaughtered those people in Australia just recently, did they do a check to see the Jews that they were killing, whether they were Zionists or not Zionists? I must have missed that.
Yeah, of course not. Everybody hears Jew. Everybody hears Jew. But Mamdani, that's why this is so insidious. He makes this false distinction between Jews and Zionists. And what is required of the Jew is that they give up their support for Israel and that Israel be destroyed. And where does that put us? That puts us back into the 1930s. That's where Mamdani wants to bring us, where there is no Israel and Jews are at the mercy of governments that hate them. Now remember, Israel doesn't exist because of the Holocaust. The Holocaust occurred because there was no Israel. That's why Israel is so critical to Jewish lives all around the globe. And Mamdani is not okay with that.
Well, you sit here and you talk about this, and a lot of times you can't believe you're having this conversation. Because this is the United States of America, and you thought that this was a place that the Jewish community could live freely and openly, and everything would be fine. This was the last great hope, other than Israel, for the Jewish community, because of the intolerance, the hatred, the psychosis of anti-Semitism that's gone on for generations and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And yet, you wake up and you find out that you're going to have a mayor-elect who has 1 million Jews in the city of New York that is responsible for protecting and defending, and he has this hostility towards the Jewish community, even though he denies it. So what's the net of that? The net of that is large numbers of people I talk to, Jews and Christians, say to me, how can Jews stay in New York? They're not going to be safe. Where are they going to be safe? Can you really trust this guy to protect the Jewish community? Can you really trust him to recognize the contributions that the Jewish community make? Let's be very clear. As you know, I have my routine joke, and I always say there are 4 sects of Judaism. There's Orthodox and there's Reform, there's Conservative, and then I point to myself with my rep tie on sometimes, and I say, and Ralph Lauren Polo, because I'm very secular. But am I a Zionist? Absolutely. Do I have a proud Jewish identity? Absolutely. Do I feel for people of every religion and ethnic group? Of course. One of the things that the Jewish community has always brought to their lives, individually and collectively, is try to bring some light onto the world, to try to make the world a better place. They have contributed to the hospitals, the cultural institutions, the charities, educational institutions, and charities, and schools, cultural institutions bear the names of people who have built the buildings, supported the arts, given scholarships, provided jobs and goods and services, the tax base. If they are afraid and they abandon the city of New York in any significant number, then the very existence of the city of New York is under great threat, because they are the productive ones. They haven't come here. They haven't jumped the border. They haven't come here for a free lunch. They have come here to be accepted, to make a contribution, to lead quiet lives, and to try to do good. And if they realize they're no longer safe, or perceive they're no longer safe, the city of New York is in serious trouble.
Well, it's no accident that some of the most anti-Semitic governments in the history of the world have been communist/socialist countries. Just look at the Soviet Union and all the Eastern Bloc countries during the Soviet Union. Even China doesn't even have Jews; they hate Jews. It's remarkable. But Venezuela today, Hezbollah, Iran, the anti-Israel rhetoric that comes from Maduro, Cuba, always been an enemy of the state of Israel. So there's this nexus, this red-green alliance, of which Zohran Mamdani is at the vortex. He is the point of both. And they share in common a hatred of Jews and a hatred of Western civilization and the United States. Yeah, I believe without question that Zohran Mamdani hates the United States. Someone should go look at the website. He was the founder of the chapter of Student for Justice in Palestine at Bowdoin. I encourage everyone to go look at that website. The Students for Justice in Palestine believe that the United States and Canada have no right to exist, that they're occupying countries, and that they should be destroyed. This is going to be the mayor of the largest and most important city in the world.
This is Let the Record Show with Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Chairman Garcia is away with his family in Europe on vacation. Please stay with us. We'll be back in but a few moments with more important and interesting conversation.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia, and
essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia. Jesse is on vacation with his family. In the studio with me is our good friend and co-host, Eric Levine, noted commentator, attorney, and essayist, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about Trump making a grand effort to reestablish the Monroe Doctrine in our hemisphere. And I'm talking about his challenge to get Maduro off the reins of power in Venezuela, where his people were enslaved in a socialist/communistic nightmare. And I want to say that this is a dangerous situation, this Venezuelan situation, because they use it as a base, as Eric alluded to in the earlier segment. You have Chinese presence, you have North Korean presence, you have Iranian presence, you have Russian presence. This is our hemisphere. We have to protect it and guard it against these incursions. They use this for intelligence purposes, for the spying, for setting up military operations, for training camps, to try to be a countervailing force against America in our own hemisphere. And I'll also tell you there's a corollary that most people don't know about to the Monroe Doctrine. And that corollary was articulated by President Andrew Jackson, as well as articulated by President Teddy Roosevelt, which is when you're defending America and America's values and America's right to exist, and you have destabilizing forces within another country in our hemisphere, there's a legitimate right to go in and to try to take out that regime. So this is important because nobody wants to have a land war in Venezuela. One hopes that Maduro will come to his senses and leave and let the duly elected president of Venezuela take election after he rigged the election and validated his election with a corrupt judiciary. Would hope he would leave and there would not be a need for force. Maybe boycotts will work, maybe surrounding the country and having embargoes will work. Maybe the people closest to him will wake up and recognize that fighting for Maduro is not worth dying for. He's enslaved his own people. The people at the top who are corrupt and have lived well, everybody else has gone from the most productive, successful economy in Latin America to the worst, all as a result of socialist policies. Socialism, wherever it's been, wonderful rhetoric, great aspirations theoretically, every time it comes crashing down on the heads and the hearts of the people. They're enslaved, they're brutalized, they're imprisoned, they're terrorized, they're discriminated against. The ones at the top have a wonderful life, and everyone else suffers. No economy thrives with socialism. A clear and present danger to this country is the continued existence of Maduro at the head of Venezuela. We get a good government in there, we'll free the people, we'll make the United States safer, and we'll rid this hemisphere of all those enemies of Western civilization that are populating and supporting the Venezuelan regime. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we have to keep in mind Venezuela doesn't exist in a vacuum. So there is an axis of evil between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea that's trying to unseat the United States as the world's leading superpower and subvert the American-led world order. But under those four, there are they have their allies and cohorts who work with them in that effort, and among them is Venezuela. So we can weaken that axis if we weaken those other countries that support them. So that's another reason why we should be putting a lot of pressure on Venezuela. As you point out, China's there, Russia's there, Hezbollah's there, Iran is there, Cuba's there, narco-terrorists are there. But not only are narco-terrorists there, there is not a distinction between the drug cartels and Maduro. They are one and the same. The narco-terrorists, of which Maduro is the head one, runs the country. It's not that they compete. They are one in the same.
It's a narco-terrorist state.
Yes. And remember, Maduro was indicted in the United States as an indicted narco-terrorist in March of 2020. He's a wanted criminal. He needs to be arrested. As you point out, he's an illegitimate leader. Now, even the UN doesn't recognize him as the head of Venezuela. He stole that election. Plus, we're going to have to do something soon. We have a massive military buildup around Venezuela. Those military assets cannot stay there indefinitely. We're going to have to do something sooner rather than later. Now, I support President Trump completely in his efforts to trying to overthrow Maduro, because it not only will he succeed in taking away one of the world's worst despots, but it will help stabilize all of South America. Colombia is on the cusp right now. Maduro is a very destabilizing force in Colombia and other countries in the region. So it's really important that Maduro leave. And if for no other reason at this point, it's mano a mano between Trump and Maduro. And if Maduro is allowed to stay, Trump loses. Trump loses. We can't have that. We need Trump to win this. And I encourage the president to go to the American people and make the pitch as to why this is so important, and then remove him. It's not going to require some massive ground war that's going to require an American occupation of Venezuela. There are plenty of people ready to, in place in Venezuela that can step up and step in and run the country, who Venezuelans, not Americans, and they can get their country back. So I support the effort, and let's also not forget, we're saving a lot of lives. President's saving a lot of lives by preventing all that cocaine. It's not fentanyl. Fentanyl comes from China through Mexico into the United States. It's the cocaine trade. Cocaine kills a lot of people. And to the extent we're blowing up drug ships that are running cocaine to the United States, we're saving lives. And to the extent that Trump is embargoing and taking tankers that are carrying illegal oil around the globe to Iran or to Russia or to China and robbing Maduro of the money he needs to function, all good. But we can't stay there indefinitely. We need this to come to a head.
Well said, Eric. Let's switch gears again. We talked about earlier about the terror attack in Australia. So we had two incidents in recent days. This is some holiday season, by the way. You have at Brown University a couple of young kids, lovely kids, one who wanted to be a surgeon, a heart surgeon, I believe, another one who is socially and politically active. She was a vice chair of the Young Republicans in Brown. Two lovely young kids were murdered in their classroom during finals. They don't have the FBI nor local police, have not identified a suspect yet, have not made any arrests yet. It's very troubling. It raises a lot of issues. One issue it raises is, what do we have to do to make our college campuses and our universities safe? Another issue is, why does a university, one of the major universities in the country, with an endowment of, I think the number's about $8 billion, Eric, why can't they have up-to-date modern technology to seal doors, to have cameras that work, security cameras that work, so you can identify the subject, a target of investigation, to get a lead, whether a material witness or to identify a perpetrator, or to deter an act of terror? Why isn't that done? Why do we get this mealy-mouthed explanation from the president of that college about, it's guns, guns, guns? No, it's not guns, guns, guns. The gun didn't walk in and kill those two kids on Brown's campus. A person did that. A person did that. Guns can be awful instruments, but they can also be a means of self-defense to shoot back at a perpetrator of terrorism. So let's make it clear, you can have the toughest gun laws in the world, and wherever you have tough gun laws, doesn't necessarily guarantee
in
protected.
In fact, Australia has the toughest gun laws in the world. They're outlawed. And look what happened to Bondi Beach.
There you go. Now, the other issue that troubles me, and we don't have answers here, MIT. There's a professor, a nuclear physicist, one of the leading physicists in the world. I understand he was from Portugal. He was originally Portuguese, but he was also Jewish. He was assassinated, and I mean assassinated because this was not a mugging. This was 3 shots, boom, boom, boom. It was a mugging. No, it was an assassination. Now, why was this man assassinated? Was it because he was Jewish? Perhaps. Was he a supporter of Israel? Absolutely. Was he a nuclear physicist who shared information with the United States government, so much so they had presidential acclamations from both Democratic and Republican administrations because he helped protect America? Did he support Israel and perhaps help them with their nuclear program? I don't know, but it's possible. But just to look at this and say this is a one-of-a-kind, a unique situation, it's not a unique situation. I think when they find out the truth of this, you'll find out it was a calculated assassination. Now, it has not been verified yet, but the Jerusalem Post is talking about this, and they say that there are sources in Israel who say that they are looking at this. The Israeli government and their intelligence services are looking at this, given the fact that this fellow was a supporter of Israel and was Jewish. They're looking at it. What, if anything, they're sharing with U.S. intelligence and law enforcement? I don't know. But they're saying that's a good possibility in this speculation that Iran was behind it. If Iran was behind this, then I say, once and for all, why do we tolerate the Ayatollahs putting murder hits and threats of murder hits on political dissidents all across Europe or in the United States? Why do they threaten our former Secretary of State Pompeo, our former UN Ambassador Bolton, other members of Congress and the Senate? Why is this allowed? This should not be allowed. These are acts of war, and the Ayatollahs have to go. Once and for all, the Ayatollahs have to go. And we should, in the new year, pledge the United States and Western civilization to bring down this terrorist regime, the sponsor of terrorism throughout the world. We have to take them out once and for all. What say you, Eric?
Well, I understand we're running out of time, but I agree with you 100%. In the short term, we have to start taking on our enemies. Regime change in Iran is absolutely essential. Trump administration, in addition, has also decided to declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. I encourage it, the Senate and the House and the President, to include Qatar and Muslim Brotherhood sects in Qatar as part of that, and in Turkey. But in the longer term, we need to change our educational system. We need to start teaching the virtues of Western civilization. Start teaching our children why America is great. We need to start teaching our children to love our country and to teach civics. And colleges and universities need to start enforcing their own rules. Perfect example of these kafir Nazis on these campuses. These are not First Amendment issues. There are reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions are permitted, but they allow these people to break the rules under the supposed guise of the First Amendment. Just enforce the rules. You got to bring down the temperature. It has to apply to everyone. But I don't think there's any substitute in the long term for changing our educational system and teaching history. How many 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds know that Stalin and Mao killed more people than Hitler? The failures of socialism and communism. People don't understand that. They need to learn it.
This has been Let the Record Show with Eric Levine. Jesse Garcia, our esteemed colleague, is on vacation. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. On behalf of Jesse and Eric and myself, we wish you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah. We look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. As always, God bless you, God bless your families, and, of course, God bless America. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to Let the Record Show with Judge Weinberg, Chairman Jesse Garcia, and Eric Levine. You can hear Let the Record Show Sunday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.